Launching isn't just about strategy. It's about mindset, self-awareness, and not spiraling into an existential crisis every time you check your cart. In this episode, I'm breaking down how your mindset can make or break your launch, how knowing yourself helps you work with your energy and not against it, and how to stay sane before, during, and after your launch. Because let's be real, refreshing your email every 3 minutes isn't a business plan. Let's get into today's episode.
Being an online business owner is full of ups and downs. Some days you can't imagine going back to your 9-to-5, and other days you want to burn your whole business to the ground. We get it.
Welcome to Chaos to Conversions, a podcast of practical, no BS strategies to grow your online business. Each week, we're chatting about launching, copywriting, mindset, and more, so you can make sense of the chaos and do more of what works.
Join the conversation and let's grow together.
Hello, and welcome back to episode 57 of Chaos to Conversions. Today, we are going to be talking about the underrated skill, spoiler alert, it's mindset, that can make or break your next launch. So let's first talk about, and I've talked about this in other episodes before when we've talked about general business planning, but today we're going to talk about mindset in regards specifically to when you are in a live launch period, which for a lot of us feels a little bit more scary and a little bit higher pressure. So four definitions that I want us to kind of think about. The difference between growth and fixed mindset, but in regards to launching. So this is so important because you really want to try and lean into a growth mindset in relation to launching. You have to believe, hear me people, you have to believe you can improve your launch and get better at launching and make changes that will be better for your business. Because if you fall into that sort of fixed mindset that I've seen so many entrepreneurs fall into when it comes to launching, because launching can be really hard on you, you'll start to think, oh, I'm just bad at launching, or launching's just not for my business, or I just don't know how to launch and I never will. We want to try and banish those types of thoughts and lean into the more sort of growth mindset thoughts where I can get better at launching. This is just my first time, and with practice, I will feel more comfortable going live on camera. Just because I messed up one tech automation and the email went out to my whole list instead of people who registered for my webinar, I'll learn from that next time and it's okay. So the acceptance of making mistakes and knowing that you can improve your launches each time is so important, because no launch is a failure. Every launch is a little gold mine of data that you can use to improve in the future. So that's the first thing. I know I'm coming in hot here, but that's the first thing that you really need to get on board with. The second sort of lesser, I guess I would say, mindset issue that I've seen, but I've still seen it, is this idea of abundance versus scarcity mindset. So if you have someone who is a competitor, or you might consider them a competitor, launching around the same time as you with a course, a program, a membership, very, very similar, you need to try your best not to slide down the slippery slope into thinking, well, if they're launching at the same time as me, everyone's just going to buy their offer, no one's going to buy mine. We need to try and shift towards this abundance style mindset, where we believe that there's truly enough to go around, and that just because somebody else has something very similar to what you're offering, that doesn't mean that their program is, quote, taking away from yours. This is a really hard one, I think, for a lot of people, but I don't know. I've kind of seen, I think it depends on who you are. I've seen people feel the same kind of way about, like, I've seen just as many people have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I've also seen a ton of people have scarcity mindsets more so than abundance. But those are just two major mindset traps that I want you to think about and sort of really work to acknowledge that you might have some struggles with thinking in terms of fixed mindset and scarcity mindset going into launch, because it's so much better if we can see those feelings and thoughts coming and kind of acknowledge them, not give them any power, but like acknowledge that they're happening and sort of take a deep breath and gracefully push them to the side. It's much easier said than done, but if you are aware of them, that is a huge step in the right direction. The second thing I really want us to think about is know thyself, because knowing yourself during launching as a business owner, as a person, is very, very important. Most of you probably have some idea if you're an introvert or an extrovert or an ambivert, which is what I am, which is like somewhere in the middle. You can find a test. I don't have one in mind, but you can find a test online and take it, and it'll kind of like give you an idea of where you are. I mentioned I'm an ambivert. I'm like 60% introvert and 40% extrovert. If you know me personally, that's really shouldn't be that surprising to anyone, though sometimes I feel like I do present a little bit more extroverted than I really am in my life. Anyway, enough about me. If you don't know if you're an introvert or an extrovert, find one of those tests, but let's also think about, I can run you through some of the basic questions. So the one thing to think about is, where do you get your energy? And introvert or extrovert, like that's not about being outgoing or not outgoing. Introverts generally tend to recharge from spending time alone, and extroverts tend to recharge from spending time with others. It doesn't mean that like one group is like popular and loud and the other's like quiet reading a book in a corner at all times. It's just about like, how do you refresh your battery? So think about where you get your energy, whether it's from being alone or going out with others. And then also think about, how do you prefer to take in information? Do you prefer to rely on what you can like see and hear and taste, your five senses and facts? Or are you more of a kind of like go with your gut kind of person? And like first impressions mean a lot to you. You have feelings in business and you go, with that more than anything else. Like you would trust a gut feeling over an email click rate, for example. I also want to tell you, like, none of these are right or wrong. It's just some diagnostic questions to think about. The next question to consider is, how do you make decisions, which sort of pairs with the last one about information. But do you decide with talking about other people, deciding with facts? Are you like a pros and cons kind of list? Do you ask other people, their opinion? Or do you really rely on yourself internally, relying on your emotions, deciding with like what you feel in your heart rather than letting like facts or pros and cons lists sort of boss you around? Again, no right or wrong answer. And then finally, the last thing to think about when you're kind of thinking about launching and deciding if you're like more introverted or extroverted or somewhere in the middle is, how do you organize your like life and world? Now, this could be business wise, personal, but chances are you're probably a little bit of the same way in your business and in your personal life. So do you like things more structured and planned? Do you like to have a plan? Or are you more of a go with the flow, make the necessary changes, and that doesn't really bother you? So take a minute or pause this episode, go think to yourself, or am I introverted, extroverted? I'll see if I can find the quiz that I took to put in the show notes. I clearly have no affiliate link. It's just a random Google quiz. But thinking about that, we want to sort of think about how we can set ourselves up for business life, but also in terms of launching, picking some habits that can really support you when you are in a time of possible higher anticipation, like a launch. So if you come back with you are being more of an introvert, some things that could be helpful to you might include things like journaling or vision boarding, meditating, avoiding like a lot of external noise and stimulation. I should also say, by the way, and I should have said this before I said the last thing, but I should also mention that I did not like come up with these sort of ideas for what goes better with an introvert or an extrovert. It's from the book The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod is where some of these ideas are from. So feel free to look that book up. I will leave that book link in the show notes. Thinking about mindset tools for introverting, we just went over those. And then extrovert, again, could be silence and meditation, visualization, actually reading affirmations out loud. Some sort of external stimulation generally gets extroverts a little bit more recharged, hence why they feel a little bit better and regain their energy working and going out with other people. So when we're thinking about this in terms of launch time, of course, I recommend to always try and do some habits for yourself every day, but it is extra important to give yourself some extra support when you are launching. So thinking about the list that I just gave you, and if you pick up the book, there's some other ideas in there. You can also Google like ideas for introverts and extroverts to feel relaxed and recharged. Pick not like a whole list, but maybe like 2 activities to kind of add to your launch routine. So for me, as I am like basically an ambivert, meaning I'm both, I try to keep incorporating movement, like exercise, especially during launch time. And I am also a big fan of, or getting to be a bigger fan of, affirmations during launch time as well. And you can make those really specific to your individual, business and launch, not something like super general. So those are just like 2 examples, but pick a couple different things to start supporting you during your sort of more stressful times in business. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, like the actual week before launch and launch. So we're talking about 2 weeks. So these tips will be really specifically helpful if you are like getting ready to open cart on a program, course, membership, any of those things. So first thing to think about, besides know thyself and know if you're more introverted, extroverted, some supports to help you. Try and start some of those before launch, like I mentioned, because it'll be easier to maintain during launch. The other thing to think about is simply knowing your triggers and watching for self-sabotage, like we talked about before with the fixed and the scarcity mindset. If you know that you are someone who starts to kind of go down and have those thoughts about, oh, well, so-and-so's launching during this time too, so there's not going to be anyone buying my offer because they're all going to buy hers. Be aware that these thoughts are coming your way. Also, if you've launched before, you might have noticed there are some other tics that you have, like maybe you just stop promoting halfway through. If things aren't going the way that you hope they are and you're not getting, many sales, you just jump ship, right? If you know that about yourself, that's half the battle. Maybe you obsessively refresh your sales and you're just in the back end. We've all been there, no shame, but maybe you're just on the back end of Thrivecart hitting refresh every, couple hours, anytime you go near your computer. Maybe you're opening up your email every 3 minutes to see if you have any questions about your course or whatever it is that you're offering. So know what's happening, what you usually do, and watch for self-sabotage. Just being aware that you do these things, and everybody has done at least one of them, I just know it. Just being aware can make all of the difference. So still hanging out before launch, I would also plan for at least one thing of fun just for you during your cart open period. One thing of, I hate to say it, but self-care during your cart open period to kind of give yourself a break from worrying about how your launch is going. A lot of people, of course, will ask you, business friends or business acquaintances will ask you, like, how's your launch going? Are you selling a lot? How many people did you get in your program yet? And that can be really, really tough. So think about how you might want to address these questions before you even open cart. You could say things like, oh, it's going, not sure, I can let you know after, or I've got a couple people in, hopefully you do, I'll check back with you after, or not sure yet, I'm trying not to pay too close of attention, we can reflect later, things like that. Or, if you have like real business friends and you don't mind telling them like what's going on in your launch, of course, like feel free to actually give them the lowdown. But just make sure that you're setting some boundaries for yourself, because people will definitely ask how everything's going. And also, like, that might not upset you, but I have seen it upset some people. So again, back to the second covenant is know thyself and know what you're going into. So setting boundaries, making a plan for self-care, keeping yourself sane, knowing what to look out for when you start to spiral, and just acknowledging those thoughts can be really helpful. Mid-launch, or mid-cart, as they say, is tough. Usually everybody will see a sales dip during this time. So this is where it can be helpful to open yourself up to the idea that you can make a pivot mid-launch. You can make a plan for potential pivots ahead of time, realizing that launches are fluid. And if you want to release a payment plan during that time, or maybe you had an extra bonus in mind, or maybe you already knew that no matter how the launch was going, you were going to do a mid-cart Q&A, but you already knew it, right? So you're not like stressed out trying to be like, oh, I guess I'll do a Q&A and write this email. Make a plan for mid-launch, because it is universally sales will dip down during that time, even if it is a very successful launch overall. People who know that they wanted whatever you're selling will buy at the beginning, and people who love a good deadline and that adrenaline rush at the end will wait till cart close day. So the sales will trickle in during mid-launch. It is tough. Try and separate like fact from fiction and try not to go into that existential spiral of nothing is going well and I'm not making any sales. Celebrate what you have sold so far. Celebrate the things that have gone well. Acknowledge if you have those creeping like thoughts about self-doubt and scarcity mindset. Acknowledge those and try and like spin it more towards a positive. So not just pushing those thoughts away, but like hearing them, acknowledging them, and trying to actively think about how all of this experience during your launch is going to make your business stronger in the long run. Now we're getting to my favorite part, the last part, the debrief. So make sure that you celebrate the wins, reflect on what worked and what didn't. Make sure you get it all down while it's fresh in your mind. If you're feeling like after the debrief, you really want to go and burn your whole launch to the ground, make sure you go back and listen to episode 54, where I try my best to talk you out of lighting your whole launch on fire, because I promise every launch is a learning experience. Every launch is a goldmine of information. You just have to know what to tweak and what to leave alone. Mindset is important in business, but it's especially important when you're being vulnerable, like during a launch. Understanding mindset is the first step to success. Then layer on some habits that best fit your personality to support you. And finally, make a game plan to keep yourself sane before, during, and after your launch. If today's episode had you nodding along, realizing you might need a launch game plan that doesn't involve you panic refreshing your sales page, I've got you. DM me over on Instagram at Duxbury Digital and let's chat about it.
Thanks so much for stopping by to hang out with me today. If you want to learn more about how we can work together on a launch strategy or grab a freebie or one of the resources I mentioned, head over to duxburydigital.co/resources. I'll be back here next Tuesday for more practical strategies to take your business from chaos to conversions.